Angus, welcome to Capacity TV. What are Neotel's next targets for growth in the African region?
Neotel is licensed within South Africa. We're part of the Tata Communications group, and our focus is really Southern Africa. So we have a network within South Africa, and we're busy rolling out capability into the neighbouring territories around South Africa. So typically we're working with various partners there. We also have connectivity on multiple submarine cables. So our connectivity out of South Africa is across 5 separate cable systems. We're on SAT3 and SAFE and CCOM and EASY and most recently on WAX. So typically that means that we can connect customers in the countries where those cables land. And we're basically signing up with carrier partners in most of those countries to connect them.
Obviously, South Africa has been developed for quite some time. What are the challenges in connecting to neighbouring countries?
I think the first one is infrastructure. The sheer cost of rolling out optical fibre is one of the big barriers. And certainly in the African continent, what we found is that there have historically been incumbent operators who have some connectivity. But firstly, most of that connectivity has not historically been optical fibre. And secondly, there are not multiple routes connecting countries. So we're trying to establish a model of many-to-many connectivity cross-border. So where multiple carriers on one side of a border can connect with multiple carriers on the other side. And in a number of African markets, that's new. Just the concept of having competitive carriers crossing borders is new. So unlike developed markets, a lot of the things that we're doing are new to those markets. But as we were able to do that, you introduce cross-border competition. We were seeing the pricing come down of the connectivity cross-border, and also a change in the nature of the services. So there's certainly more connectivity of newer services. The internet connectivity within Africa is growing. What we're seeing is the ability now to connect ISPs within Africa rather than every connection going back to Europe or whatever.
Do you believe the lack of competition until now has led to the increasing capacity prices?
Historically, that has been the case. I think what we've seen is, over the last year or two, a very dramatic shift in the underlying capacity prices where cables have landed. As soon as you have a country where competition lands, you see a very dramatic shift in pricing. So if I just take South Africa as an example, the base price of international wholesale capacity has dropped dramatically over 2 to 3 years. And that started with the landing of CCOM in South Africa, which we did, and also now with the other competitive cables. So as those wholesale prices come down, we see that starting to filter down to the end user. But it does take some time for the advantage of the competition on the international capacity to filter through to users.
Do you believe Africa can cope with the level of connectivity as recently experienced on a backhaul basis?
I think that's where our biggest problem is. With submarine cables that have landed, in a number of cases, they're on the beach, and that's where the connectivity is. And we need to see more connectivity in backhaul. And that's not just a question of getting the physical connectivity. There are countries, obviously, where there is physical connectivity, but what we don't have yet is significant competitive connectivity. One of the points about WAX, I'm currently chair of the WAX consortium, and one of the things that we've been driving as WAX is we're driving a model where multiple carriers within a country can get access to the cable. And what that does is creates a competitive market for international capacity. Now, obviously, if you can't connect multiple carriers to the landing station, you don't have competition. And so, country by country, what we're seeing is that competition starting to come in. So what WAX has done on the West Coast is create a market for competitive connectivity. In a number of countries, that's the first time that's happened. In some cases, in fact, WAX is the first cable landing. But the open access model that WAX has adopted means that there's actual commercial competition for international capacity.
Following the well-publicised launch of WAX, what do you think were the main highlights of it?
2 things really. I think the first one is what I've just said now, which is that it is a different model. It's not like previous consortia, which were often very closed and limiting. This model is going to change markets. And the second thing is just the sheer capacity. It's the biggest capacity cable ever to land in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think what we're seeing is that on the back of that, the unit price of capacity coming down, and combine that with what we're seeing on the trends on mobile uptake and particularly internet uptake in a number of markets, there is now enough capacity. I don't think that there's a shortage of capacity in most markets now. What we're actually seeing is a need to drive the access connectivity and obviously more competition in those markets, which will drive prices down for end users.
Do you believe that is the next phase of development in the African region?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a combination of 2 things. It's a combination of wireless and wireline. In the African context, we always talk about wireless. I mean, certainly 3G has been a massive growth of internet use in Africa. Most voice in Africa is mobile. Mm-hmm. And we will certainly see as LTE and the 4G networks start to happen, I think we're going to see also another uptick in the ability to connect to the internet. But what's often forgotten in the African context is the need for fixed connectivity. Historically, there has not been a lot of good wireline connectivity in many countries. So the penetration rates on ordinary copper line telephones were very low. As we see the internet growing, we need fiber connectivity. So we need more fiber to the premises. We need the ability to deliver broadband as we see it in many developed markets. So as Neotel in South Africa, we have some flagship broadband products. At the moment focused towards business, but we have broadband products which would compare favourably with broadband products in Europe, for example.
And is Tata still committed to investing in the project?
Absolutely. We are really, in many ways, a second home market for Tata Communications. So Tata Communications now is about a 60% shareholder in Neotel, Tata Communications together with Tata Africa. And effectively we're part of the group. You know, Tata Communications was never a short-term investor. They are a long-term investor in the South African market, and Neotel is the vehicle through which they're doing it.
Angus, thanks for your time.
Thank you.